The great hall of Xantara Prime glowed with blue light. High Commander Vecthorn looked out at the crowd of Xantari officials. Their gray-scaled skin reflected the lights as they raised crystal glasses filled with glowing liquid. 1,000 years, Vecthorn said. His voice boomed through the hall. 1,000 years since our first ships left our world. 1,000 years of bringing order to the chaos of space. The crowd cheered. Their forked tongues flicked out in approval. Tomorrow, Emperor Zelvax will speak to all our worlds. The celebration will be the greatest in our history. Drink now to our eternal empire. As the Xantari drank, Vecthorn smiled. The Empire now controlled 300 star systems. They had taken many alien races as slaves. Each one had tried to fight back. Each one had failed. Humans had been the latest to fall. They had fought harder than most. But in the end, they surrendered like all the others. Now they worked in mines and farms across the Empire, quiet and obedient for the past 75 years. Far from the celebrations, on the small mining planet Kelnar 4, Eli Warren wiped sweat from his face. The mine was hot, and the air was thick with dust. He had spent 12 hours breaking rocks looking for the blue crystals the Xantari needed for their ships. "Move faster, human," the guard said. The guard was a Xantari soldier with a shock stick in his hand. He liked using it when the miners slowed down. Eli nodded and swung his pick again. He was 35 years old, born in the mines. He had never seen Earth, though his parents had told him stories before they died. Stories about blue skies and oceans, about freedom. When the shift ended, Eli walked back to the slave quarters with the other miners. His muscles ached. His lungs burned from the dust. "You look tired," Kate Donahue said. She walked beside him, her face also covered in dust. She was a few years younger than Eli, with short brown hair and strong arms from years of mining. "Extra quota today," Eli said. "For the big celebration." Kate made a face. "The great empire turns 1,000. Lucky us." They reached the long gray building where 200 humans lived. The walls were thin metal. The beds were hard platforms with thin blankets, but it was better than the mines. Peter Morris waited for them by the door. Peter was older, maybe 50, with a white beard and arms covered in scars. He had been on many planets over the years. The Xantari moved skilled miners where they were needed. "Inside, quickly," Peter said in a low voice. His eyes darted around, checking for guards. Once they were in the building, Peter led them to the far corner where his bed was. He reached under the thin mattress and pulled out a small metal box. "What's that?" Kate asked. Peter opened the box. Inside was a small device, no bigger than a coin. It glowed with a faint green light. "Communication device," Peter whispered. "From the Resistance." Eli felt his heart beat faster. There were always rumors of a human resistance, but most believed they were just stories to give people hope. "There is no resistance," Eli said. "Not anymore." Peter smiled. "That's what they want the Xantari to think. That's what they want us to think." He pressed the device, and a message appeared in the air above it. Just 3 words. "Look to stars." "What does it mean?" Kate asked. Peter shook his head. "I don't know. But the message came from Earth." "Earth?" Eli could not hide his surprise. "But Earth is under heavy guard. No messages can get out." "Apparently some can," Peter said. He put the device back in the box and hid it again. "Tonight, when the second moon rises, we need to watch the sky." Later that night, the 3 of them stood outside. It was against the rules to be outside after dark, but the guards were busy watching the Emperor's broadcast from the capital. The celebration would last all night. The larger of the planet's 2 moons was rising. The smaller one would appear soon. "Whatever we're looking for, I hope it happens soon," Kate said, nervous. "If they catch us out here." They all knew the punishment for breaking curfew. No one spoke of it. The second moon began to rise. At first, nothing seemed different. Then Eli noticed something strange. A shadow passed over the moon. Then another. And another. "Those aren't clouds," Peter whispered. "Too regular, too straight." "Ships?" Kate asked. "If they are, they're not Xantari," Peter said. "Their ships have lights. These are just shadows." Eli counted at least 7 shadows passing over the moons, maybe more. They moved in perfect formation. Silent, invisible except for the brief moments they passed in front of the moons. "The Xantari don't know," Eli realized. "Look at the guard tower, they're still watching the broadcast, they don't see anything." In the distance, the mining colony's governor's mansion was lit up. The Xantari officials were having their own small celebration. Music drifted across the compound. They had no idea what was passing over their heads. "We should go back inside," Kate said, "before someone notices." They returned to their building, but sleep was impossible. Eli lay on his hard bed thinking about the shadows in the sky. Who were they? What did it mean? The next morning, work began as usual. The guards seemed tired from celebrating all night. The governor arrived at the mine entrance, his scales shining in the morning sun. "In honor of the Empire's 1,000-year celebration," the governor announced. "Production quotas will increase by 20% for the next month. The Emperor requires more crystals for the new fleet." The humans kept their faces blank. They had learned long ago not to show emotion in front of the Xantari. As they entered the mine, Peter managed to whisper to Eli and Kate, "Something is happening. The resistance message, the shadows, they're connected." At the Imperial Palace on Xantara Prime, a junior science officer approached one of the Emperor's advisors with a report. "Sir, we detected strange gravitational readings at the edge of the Kelnar system last night." The advisor, still feeling the effects of too much celebration wine, barely looked at the report. "Sensor malfunction. Fix it." "But sir, similar readings were detected in 7 other systems at exactly the same time." The advisor waved his hand dismissively. "The celebration has pushed all systems to their limits. File your report and return to your post." The science officer hesitated, then bowed and left. In his private chamber, Emperor Zelvax prepared for his grand speech to the Empire. After 1,000 years, the Xantari ruled supreme. No force in the galaxy could challenge them. As servants dressed him in ceremonial armor, the Emperor had no way of knowing that the greatest threat to his empire was already inside his defenses. Silent, watching, waiting. The 1,000-year empire had one more night to celebrate. After that, everything would change. Admiral Susan Blackwood stood on the bridge of the Earth warship Constellation. The ship was huge but completely silent. The bridge was dark, lit only by the soft glow of screens and the distant stars outside the main window. 50 ships moved, together through space. Not one of them appeared on any Xantari radar. They were invisible to every detection system the Empire had. This was the Shadow Drive, the result of 75 years of secret work. "Status report," Susan said quietly. "All ships in formation," said the officer next to her. "Shadow drives functioning at 100%. We are completely undetectable." Susan nodded. She was 52 years old with gray streaks in her dark hair. She had been preparing for this mission her entire life. "Time to arrival at the capital?" "6 hours, Admiral." Susan looked at the star map on the main screen. Little dots of light showed all the major Xantari worlds. Soon, those worlds would see that humans were not the quiet, defeated slaves the Xantari thought they were. Susan remembered the day the Xantari came to Earth. She had been just a little girl. The alien ships appeared suddenly in the sky above major cities. There was no warning, no message. They simply started destroying everything. Millions died in the first day. Earth's military tried to fight back, but Xantari technology was too advanced. After 3 days of fighting, when half of Earth's major cities were burning, the world leaders surrendered. The Xantari took millions of humans as slaves and sent them to planets across their empire. They left enough people on Earth to keep producing more slaves, but they destroyed most technology and placed the planet under heavy guard. What the Xantari didn't know was that humans had managed to save much of their knowledge. They had hidden plans and ideas. They had built secret underground facilities. And they had planned their revenge for 75 years. "Admiral," called an officer from a side station. "Message from Agent Carter on the capital planet." "Put it through," Susan said. A text message appeared on her screen. It was short. "All beacons in place. Palace security unchanged. Awaiting your arrival." William Carter had been on Xantara Prime for 10 years, posing as a servant in the Imperial Palace. He had slowly placed quantum beacons throughout the capital. The fleet would use these beacons to appear directly above their targets. In another part of the constellation, Jack Reeves prepared with his Special Forces team. They were all genetically enhanced soldiers, made stronger and faster to fight the physically superior Xantari. They had trained their entire lives for this mission. "Final equipment check," Jack told his team. 20 men and women in black combat suits nodded. They checked their weapons and gear once more. Olivia Martinez, Jack's second-in-command, approached him. "The neural dampening field generators are all set. Once activated, all Xantari neural tech will shut down instantly." This was their greatest advantage. Over the centuries, the Xantari had become completely dependent on neural implants. These devices connected their brains directly to their technology. Without them, their weapons and systems would not work. "Good," Jack said. "Remember, we want prisoners, not bodies. This is liberation, not revenge." Back on the bridge, Susan received reports from the other ships in the fleet. All were ready, all were still undetected. The Xantari Empire continued to celebrate, unaware that its 1,000-year rule was about to end. On Xantara Prime, William Carter moved quietly through the crowded halls of the Imperial Palace. He looked like any other human servant, keeping his eyes down, staying invisible to the Xantari who barely noticed humans unless they needed something. William had placed the final quantum beacon that morning, hiding it in a decorative statue in the Emperor's own throne room. Now he just needed to activate it when the time came. He passed 2 Xantari guards who were talking about the celebration. "The Emperor's speech begins at midnight," one said. "All officials will be in the Grand Hall." Perfect, William thought. All targets in one place. On the mining planet, Eli, Kate, and Peter worked in the mines as usual, but there was a tension in the air. More humans had seen the shadows passing over the moons. Word spread quietly from person to person. Something was happening. The Xantari guards seemed nervous too, though for different reasons. Orders had come from the capital to increase security. No one knew why. "Quiet, humans," shouted a guard. "Work faster. The governor will be inspecting the mine today." Eli swung his pick, breaking rocks, searching for the blue crystals, but his mind was elsewhere. The message from the resistance, the shadows in the sky. Something big was coming, and he wanted to be ready. In a private room in the governor's mansion, the Xantari leader of the mining colony received an urgent message from the capital. Strange gravitational anomalies had been detected in multiple systems. All outposts were to be on high alert. The governor dismissed it as nothing important, probably just some space phenomenon. Nothing could threaten the Empire. They had ruled for 1,000 years. They would rule for 1,000 more. Back on the Constellation, Susan received word that all ships were in position near their targets. 50 major Xantari worlds would be hit simultaneously. The element of surprise was total. 4 hours until the Emperor's speech, her officer reported. "All ships report ready." Susan looked around the bridge. The men and women there represented the best of humanity. Many had been born in secret facilities, raised and trained away from Xantari eyes. Others, like her, had escaped slavery and joined the resistance. "Send the coded message to all our people on the ground," Susan ordered. "Operation Checkmate begins at midnight, capital time." Across the Empire, hidden human agents received the message. In mines and farms and factories and in palaces, they prepared. Many had been in place for years, waiting for this moment. On Xantara Prime, William received the message while serving drinks to Xantari officials. He showed no reaction, but inside, his heart raced. After 10 years of deep cover, The time had finally come. In the Grand Hall, Emperor Zelvax prepared for his speech. He would announce the construction of 1,000 new warships. He would declare the beginning of a new expansion period. New worlds would be conquered. New species would be enslaved. The Zantari Emperor had no idea that his empire was about to fall, or that the quiet humans who served him drinks and cleaned his floors had been his enemies all along. On the bridge of the Constellation, Susan Blackwood gave her final order before the attack. All ships prepare for synchronized strike. Shadow drives to remain active until the moment of emergence. We appear precisely at midnight. The human fleet continued its silent approach, invisible in the darkness of space. The night that would change the galaxy forever had begun. The Grand Hall of the Imperial Palace on Zantara Prime was filled with Zantari officials. They wore their best armor, polished to a high shine. The celebration of the Empire's 1,000-year rule had reached its peak. Emperor Zelvax rose from his throne. The room fell silent. This was the moment the entire Empire had been waiting for. His speech would be broadcast to all 300 worlds under Zantari control. "My loyal subjects," the Emperor began. His voice was deep and powerful. "For 1,000 years our great empire has brought order to the stars. In orbit above the planet, invisible to all Zantari sensors, the Earth warship Constellation waited with 10 other ships. The rest of the fleet was positioned above other major Zantari worlds. On the bridge, Admiral Susan Blackwood watched the seconds count down on the main screen. Exactly midnight, capital time. The moment every human had been waiting for. All ships. "Execute emergence," Susan commanded. Across the Empire, on 50 different worlds, human warships appeared in the skies. They seemed to come from nowhere. Their shadow drives deactivated at the exact same moment. On the mining colony, Eli Warren was outside again with Kate and Peter, watching the night sky. Suddenly, 2 massive ships appeared above them. They made no sound. They just appeared, like ghosts becoming solid. In the governor's mansion, the Zantari officials were watching the Emperor's speech on large screens. They did not notice when the screens briefly flickered. They did not see the massive ships that had appeared above their colony. On Zantara Prime, William Carter stood against the wall of the Grand Hall, posing as a servant. He watched the Emperor, who was still speaking, unaware of what was happening. William's hand moved to his pocket where a small device waited. "Deploy the neural dampening field," Susan ordered from the Constellation. William pressed the button on his device. All across the Imperial Palace, hidden devices activated. The same thing happened on every targeted Zantari world at the same moment. The Emperor stopped mid-sentence. His eyes widened in shock. Around the room, Zantari officials grabbed at their heads. Their neural implants, the technology that connected them to all their systems, suddenly went dead. "What is happening?" the Emperor demanded. But the palace, security systems were not responding. The guards' weapons would not fire. Nothing worked. On the mining colony, the Zantari guards fell to their knees, clutching their heads. The neural implants that controlled their weapons and armor had shut down. They were helpless. "Now," Peter said to Eli and Kate, "it's happening now." All across the colony, humans stopped working. They stood up straight for the first time in years. The guards could not stop them. From the ships above, small craft descended. They landed in the main square of the colony. The doors opened and humans in combat armor stepped out. A woman approached Eli, Kate, and Peter. "I'm Captain Diane Lewis," she said. "Earth Liberation Forces, you're free now." Back on Zantara Prime, the Grand Hall doors opened. Jack Reeves and his Special Forces team entered. They wore black combat suits that made them almost invisible. In the dim light, William Carter stepped forward, no longer pretending to be a servant. "The Emperor and all officials are secure," he said to Jack. "The neural dampening field has disabled all their technology." The Emperor, still on his throne, looked at the humans in shock. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "How dare you interrupt the Imperial speech?" Jack approached the throne. "Emperor Zelvax, by order of the Earth Liberation Forces, you are now a prisoner of war. Your empire ends tonight." The Emperor could not believe what he was hearing. Impossible. You are just slaves. How could you possibly— We were never just slaves, William said. For 75 years we prepared. We built ships you could not detect. We created technology you could not imagine. In orbit above the planet, Susan received reports from all 50 strike teams across the Empire. The operation was proceeding perfectly. The Zantari, dependent on their neural technology, had no way to fight back. All primary targets secured, her officer reported. No casualties on either side. This was what Susan had insisted on. No revenge killings. No unnecessary deaths. The humans would not become like their former masters. On the mining colony, Eli watched in amazement as the Zantari governor was led out of his mansion in restraints. The guards who had tormented them for years were now prisoners themselves. How did this happen? Kate asked Captain Lewis. How did you build such ships without them knowing? We never stopped fighting, Lewis explained. When they took people from Earth, they didn't realize they were taking engineers, scientists, soldiers. We passed knowledge in secret from generation to generation. We built hidden facilities in asteroid belts where their sensors couldn't reach. Eli looked up at the massive ships hovering silently above the colony. And they never detected you? The shadow drive, Lewis said with pride. It bends light and gravity around our ships. To their sensors, we simply don't exist. Back on Zantara Prime, Jack's team secured the Imperial Palace. Other teams across the capital took control of all major government buildings. It happened, so quickly and quietly that most citizens of the capital didn't even know anything had changed. In the throne room, the Emperor was placed under guard. Jack activated his communication device. Admiral, the palace is secure. The Emperor is in custody. On the constellation, Susan nodded with satisfaction. Well done, begin Phase 2. Jack turned to William. Time to make the announcement. William nodded and moved to the Imperial Broadcast System. The same system that had been about to carry. The Emperor's speech would now announce the Empire's fall. Across all 300 worlds, screens came to life. Instead of the Emperor, the people of the Empire saw a human woman with gray-streaked hair and a determined expression. People of the former Zantari Empire, Susan began. I am Admiral Susan Blackwood of the Earth Liberation Forces. The Zantari government has fallen. Their leaders are in custody. Their military has been neutralized without bloodshed. There was stunned silence across countless worlds as both Zantari citizens and enslaved aliens watched. To all enslaved peoples, you are now free. Human forces will arrive to ensure your safety and help establish new governments. To Zantari citizens, remain calm. No harm will come to those who accept the new reality peacefully. On the mining colony, Eli, Kate, Peter, and hundreds of other humans cheered. After generations of slavery, they were free at last. What happens now? Eli asked Captain Lewis. Lewis looked around at the former slaves, at the Zantari guards now in custody, at the silent ships above. Now, she said, we build something better than an empire. As the night continued, reports flowed in from across the stars. World after world reported the same thing: complete success. The 1,000-year empire had fallen in a single night without a shot being fired. The humans had won not through superior force but through patience, planning, and technology the Zantari never saw coming, and it had all happened in silence. The morning after the silent takeover, countless beings across 300 worlds woke to a new reality. The Zantari Empire, which had ruled for 1,000 years, had fallen overnight. On the mining colony, Eli Warren stood in the main square. The place where Zantari guards had once beaten slaves for minor offenses was now filled with free humans. Some laughed, some cried, many just looked stunned. I still can't believe it, Kate said, standing beside him. I keep thinking I'll wake up and find this was all a dream. Peter approached them, walking with Captain Lewis. They're going to need volunteers, Peter said. People who know the colony, who can help organize things until a proper government can be set up. I'll help, Eli said without hesitation. After a lifetime of being told what to do, making his own choice felt strange but good. On the Earth warship constellation, Admiral Susan Blackwood faced a different challenge. The former Emperor Zelvax had been brought aboard as a prisoner. Now he sat across from her in a secure room, his scales dull without his ceremonial armor. "You have made a terrible mistake," the Emperor said. "The Xantari people will never accept human rule." "We don't want to rule," Susan replied calmly. "We want freedom, for ourselves and for every species your empire enslaved." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Then what happens to my people?" "They live as equals, not masters. They keep their homes and their lives, but not their empire." In another part of the ship, Lisa Chen, head of human intelligence, worked with her team to sort through thousands of files taken from the Imperial archives. What they found confirmed their worst fears. "Admiral," Lisa said when Susan entered the room. "You need to see this." Lisa showed Susan documents that revealed the Xantari's true plans for humanity. They had been preparing to harvest humans for their unique genetic traits. The Xantari scientists had discovered something in human DNA that could extend their lifespans. "They weren't just using us as workers," Lisa explained. "They were studying us, preparing to use us as raw material." Susan felt cold anger but kept her voice steady. "How many other species have they done this to?" "At least 7, Lisa said. "Complete extinction in each case. We would have been next." Back on the mining colony, human soldiers helped organize food distribution. The Xantari guards were confined to their barracks, their neural implants still disabled by the dampening field. Eli worked with Captain Lewis to create lists of all humans on the colony, their skills, and their needs. For the first time, he was using his mind instead of just his muscles. "What happens to the Xantari here?" Eli asked Lewis as they walked through the former slave quarters. "They'll be given a choice," Lewis said. "They can live peacefully under the new system, or they can be relocated to Xantari-only worlds if they can't accept the change." Eli stopped walking. "And what about us? Do we go back to Earth?" Lewis smiled. "If you want to. Ships will be available. But after 75 years, many humans have never even seen Earth. Some might want to stay where they are and build something new." Across the galaxy, on world after world, similar scenes played out. Long enslaved people celebrated their freedom, while humans from the Liberation Fleet helped establish order. On Xantara Prime, the Imperial capital, Director Frank Nelson arrived to oversee the transition. He met with Jack Reeves and William Carter in what had been the Emperor's strategy room. "The other species are forming a coalition," Frank told them. "They want humans to lead it." Jack looked surprised. "Why us? We were just another enslaved race." "But we were the ones who freed everyone," William pointed out. "That means something." Frank nodded. "It does. But I've told them we won't be the new Xantari. We'll help build a council with representatives from all species, including reformed Xantari, no more empires." In orbit above Earth, Susan Blackwood stood on the bridge of the constellation, looking down at her home planet for the first time in her life. The blue and green world filled the main screen. It looked small and precious. Her officer approached, with a report. "All Shadow Fleet vessels accounted for, Admiral. No losses." Susan nodded. The technology that had allowed their ships to move undetected through Xantari space had worked perfectly. No one had seen them coming until it was too late. "Begin the dismantling process," she ordered. "Keep only enough ships active to maintain security during the transition." The officer looked surprised. "We're giving up our advantage?" "We didn't. Fight to become the new rulers," Susan said firmly. "The shadow technology stays secret, but we won't need a massive fleet anymore." On a view screen nearby, news from across the former empire continued to flow in. Most planets were transitioning peacefully. A few had seen minor uprisings from Xantari who couldn't accept their loss of power, but these were quickly contained. Susan opened a channel to Frank Nelson on Xantara Prime. "How are things proceeding?" Frank's face appeared on the screen. "Better than expected. The other species are eager to work with us. They've been waiting for this day for centuries. And the Xantari population? Shocked, mostly. Their entire society was built around being superior to everyone else. It's not easy for them to adjust. Susan nodded. Keep me updated. I'm heading to Earth soon. After ending the call, Susan returned to her quarters. On her desk was a small wooden box. Inside was a very old photo of her parents, taken before the Zantari invasion. They had both died in the resistance, never seeing this day. We did it, she whispered to the photo. Just like you said we would. Back on the mining colony, night had fallen again. But for the first time there was no curfew, no guards watching. Humans walked freely under the stars. Eli, Kate, and Peter sat together outside, looking up at the two moons. The same moons they had seen the shadows pass over just 2 nights ago. My grandfather used to tell stories, Peter said, about how humans would one day take back their freedom. I believed him when I was a child, but as I got older, it seemed impossible. Not impossible, Eli said, just very, very difficult. Kate looked at the stars above them. What do you think happens now? For all of us? Eli thought about Captain Lewis's offer to help organize the colony, about the possibility of seeing Earth someday, about all the choices they suddenly had. I don't know, he said honestly. But for the first time we get to decide for ourselves. Around them, other humans were gathered in small groups. Some sang old Earth songs that had been passed down through generations. Others made plans for the future. All of them were free, and high above, silent ships kept watch, ensuring that this night of freedom would be followed by many more. 6 months passed since the night the silent human warships appeared. Across the former Zantari Empire, a new order was taking shape. The transition had not been easy, but it was working better than anyone expected. On the mining colony, now called New Haven, Eli Warren walked through what had once been the slave quarters. The simple buildings had been improved with proper walls, real beds, and heating systems. No one was forced to work in the mines anymore. Those who chose to continue mining did so for fair pay, with proper safety equipment. Eli now served as one of the colony's representatives to the new Galactic Coalition. He wore a simple blue uniform instead of the ragged work clothes of a slave. The transport ship will be here tomorrow, Kate said, falling into step beside him. She had become head of the colony's education system, teaching children who had never before been allowed to learn. Good, Eli said. We need those medical supplies. They walked to the main square, which had been transformed into a marketplace. Humans and even some Zantari traded goods peacefully. It was still strange to see Zantari without weapons, without their air of superiority. Peter approached them, looking concerned. There's a message from Earth. The Coalition Council is gathering for the signing ceremony. They want all representatives. There. The signing ceremony. The final step in creating the new government that would replace the Empire. Eli had known it was coming, but he felt nervous about returning to Earth, a planet he had never seen. 2 days later, Eli found himself on a transport ship heading to Earth. Kate and Peter had come too, along with representatives from dozens of other former slave colonies. Nervous? Peter asked as they stood by a window watching stars streak by. Yes, Eli admitted. What if we can't make this work? What if we just replace one bad system with another? That's exactly why it will work, Kate said. Because we're asking those questions instead of just grabbing power. When they arrived at Earth, Eli was struck by how blue it was. The oceans covered most of the planet, gleaming in the sunlight. Cities that had been destroyed during the invasion had been rebuilt. Green parks and forests covered areas that had once been ruins. The ship landed in a city called Geneva. Representatives from all species that had been part of the Empire gathered in a large circular building. The atmosphere was solemn but hopeful. Admiral Susan Blackwood stood at the center of the room. Her uniform was different now, simpler. Most of the fleet had been dismantled as promised. Only a few ships remained active, serving as peacekeepers. Today, Susan began, we take the final step in replacing an empire of domination with a coalition of equals. Director Frank Nelson stood beside her. He had overseen much of the transition, working tirelessly to ensure all species had a voice. The document before you, Frank said. The Covenant of Stars, ensures that no single species can ever again dominate others. Each world governs itself but sends representatives to this council for matters that affect us all. Eli looked around the room. There were beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors. Species that had been enemies under Xantari rule now sat side by side. Even a small group of Xantari were present. They were the reformers, those who had accepted the new reality and wanted to help build something better than their empire had been. One by one, representatives came forward to sign the document. When it was Eli's turn, he thought about the mine where he had spent his life breaking rocks. He thought about the shadows he had seen passing over the moons that night. He signed his name with a steady hand. In a holding facility not far away, former Emperor Zelvax watched the ceremony on a screen. He had been treated fairly, even after the discovery of his plans to harvest humans. There would be a trial, but there would be no execution, no revenge. Susan Blackwood entered the room. After the ceremony, the former emperor looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and bitterness. "You could have destroyed us," he said. "Yet you didn't." "That would have made us no better than you," Susan replied. "There is one thing I never understood," Zelvax said. "How did you build your ships, your technology, without us knowing? We monitored Earth closely." Susan smiled slightly. "We were never the simple slaves you thought we were. While you watched for weapons and uprisings, we passed knowledge through stories, through songs, through whispers. We built our resistance in ways your scanners could never detect." She left him to think about that, joining the others for the celebration that followed the signing. Eli stood with Kate and Peter on a balcony overlooking the city of Geneva. Night was falling and lights were coming on across the city. "I've decided to stay on Earth," Peter said. "They need people who can teach about life on other worlds." Kate nodded. "I'm going back to New Haven. There's still work to be done there." "And you?" Peter asked Eli. Eli looked up at the stars, thinking about all the worlds out there, all the people building new lives after centuries of oppression. "I want to help with the transition on other worlds," he said. "Share what we learned on New Haven." They stood in silence for a moment, three friends who had once been slaves now free to choose their own paths. At the main celebration, Susan Blackwood raised a glass. Around her were the architects of humanity's silent victory and representatives of all the formerly enslaved peoples. "To freedom," she said simply. Everyone raised their glasses. To freedom. Later that night, when the celebrations had ended, Eli walked alone through a park in Geneva. Real trees, real grass. The air smelled different than the dusty atmosphere of the mining colony. Above him, Earth's single moon shone brightly. A memorial had been built in the center of the park. Names of billions of humans who had died during the occupation, either in the initial invasion or during the long years of slavery that followed. So many names, so many lives. But they had not died for nothing. Their sacrifice had led to this moment, to freedom not just for humanity but for all the enslaved peoples of the former empire. Eli placed his hand on the memorial. "We did it," he whispered. "We reclaimed our future." Throughout the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, beings looked up at their night skies. For 1,000 years those skies had belonged to the Xantari Empire. Now they belonged to everyone. And somewhere among the stars, the shadow ships that had appeared so suddenly still kept their silent watch. A reminder that freedom, once won, must be protected. The 1,000-year empire had fallen in a single night. The peace that replaced it would last far longer.